week on the Communicators, a discussion on the role of Homeland Security in the stopping of Internet-based intellectual property theft. Our guest is Erik Barnett, an Assistant Deputy Director at U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Erik Barnett, what's your responsibility when it comes to counterfeit intellectual property and piracy?
I am the Assistant Deputy Director of ICE, and ICE has specific responsibilities for counterfeiting and piracy. That is to protect American businesses from having their product taken and copied and then sold, imitations, or if it's an electronic product such as a movie or music, put on, pirated basically, and put onto the internet. And so my responsibility is to make sure that ICE, which is the second largest federal law enforcement agency and has about 7,000 agents, that we are using our law enforcement responsibilities to enforce the criminal laws that protect American companies.
Well, given that this is Immigrations and Customs Enforcement's responsibility, this is an international problem, correct? This is not domestic necessarily?
It really is an international problem. The United States is certainly not alone in having its products taken and then sold as counterfeits. We are fortunate at ICE because we have 63 offices actually in 44 countries. And we work a lot with our international partners. We work a lot with the World Customs Organization and others, Interpol, to make sure that we can enforce American laws as well as hopefully have other countries enforce its own counterfeiting and piracy laws if they have them.
Seeing that this is our Communicators program, we want to kind of zero in on intellectual property and piracy. What kind of issues are we talking about when we say intellectual property?
So intellectual property, of course, is the protection of a copyright or a trademark, and there are criminal laws that specifically allow ICE and the FBI and some other federal law enforcement agencies to enforce those criminal laws, working with the Department of Justice. And what we're talking about is really theft. We're talking about individuals and sometimes criminal organizations that are stealing. They're stealing American ideas, they're stealing American products, they're stealing American innovation. And they're taking that and then selling it as their own, usually a shoddy copy, or if it's an electronic copy, of course, it's usually a camcorded movie or maybe a pirated song. And they're then putting that out, for instance, over the internet and charging money for it or accepting revenue for it.
Have you guesstimated or estimated how much this is costing American businesses and how much it's costing the American taxpayer?
So there are estimates, and those estimates are that the United States has lost approximately 375,000 jobs through counterfeiting and piracy, and billions of dollars in lost revenue, lost taxes. For a lot of these industries, especially the entertainment industries, their products, when they are legitimately sold, actually fund health insurance for its employees, fund pension plans. There are unions that specifically exist for the purpose of helping their members have health insurance and pension plans, and that's all from the revenue that's generated from the sale, the legitimate sale of their product.
Well, the Director of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, John Morton, at a press conference in July, had this to say about U.S. efforts on a specific project you worked on, Operation in Our Sights. Here he is.
Today we announce a long-term effort to turn the table on these thieves. ICE, in coordination with our partners at the Intellectual Property Rights Center, is launching Operation in Our Sights, a sustained effort to combat criminal counterfeiting and piracy over the internet. Working with industry, we will systematically target websites that offer counterfeit or pirated products. We will seize the websites, we will prosecute the owners, we will forfeit the illegal proceeds. If a site reappears, so will we. If the criminals move overseas, we will follow.
Erik Barnett, what is Operation in Our Sights?
Operation in Our Sights is a ICE-led operation that specifically is designed to attack websites and its operators and their operators that are engaged in online piracy. So those websites that specifically are offering, in this instance, free movies that sometimes have been camcorded or illegally copied, music, in many cases counterfeit software, and it also, however, is broader. It's going to also look at counterfeit pharmaceuticals, health and safety items, electronics, and other types of items that are regularly, counterfeit items that are regularly peddled over the internet.
Well, Isaac Wolf is also joining us. He's a reporter with the Scripps Howard News Service.
Yeah, I just wanted to open by asking, Mr. Barnett, for every one of these sites that's removed, it seems like others replace it. A close source of mine, somebody who regularly views this content, told me that he noticed a few of these sites had gone down recently, but with a few clicks of his mouse had no problem finding the same movies, the same TV shows that he wanted to watch. How is this not a game of whack-a-mole?
Well, Operation In Our Sights initially took down, through the seizure of domain names, 59 various domain names. But it is true that there are going to be other criminals out there, there are going to be other criminal sites. We wanted to be very effective, though, in taking out the largest sites. So we worked directly with industry. We worked directly with the Motion Picture Association of America to make sure that the sites we were looking at were the sites that, frankly, offered the most content, the most protected content. And when you looked at the ratings, for instance, of these sites, there is a group called Alexa rankings. The Alexa rankings for these sites were incredibly low, and a low Alexa rating is actually better, it's like a golf score, than a high Alexa rating, which meant it was a very popular site. One of the sites was 257th most popular internet site in the United States. And by taking out those sites, we did not only reduce the ability of these counterfeiters and pirators to put the content online, we also took away their ability to, frankly, generate ad revenue. All of these sites exist for the purpose of generating profit. That's, of course, what all criminal activity is designed to do. And the MPAA believes that these sites take about 9 to 15 months to build up the type of buzz, frankly, the type of traffic that they need to generate sufficient ad revenue. By taking their domain names, by taking away their ability to exist, we have taken away their ability to get ad traffic and therefore money.
Right. I understand a lot of these sites don't necessarily host the content. They act as a sort of central hub in a peer-to-peer system. Can you talk a little bit about some of the peer-to-peer issues that you face, whether with these sites or other illegal content providers?
What we're seeing a lot now is not as much peer-to-peer in, for instance, the content sharing. What we're seeing is linking sites and cyber lockers. And the linking sites, of the 9 general sites we took down, 7 of them were linking sites, and 1 of them was a cyber locker. And so there are a lot of sites that are, as you say, hosting the content, but they're not necessarily bringing people there. It's the linking sites that are bringing people there. Both of them are very dangerous, though, because what they allow is pirators and counterfeiters to place products out there for individuals to download, and of course no revenue goes to the industry, no revenue goes to the American companies.
What is a cyber locker?
A cyber locker is basically, you could think of it as like a self-storage facility. You'll take your items to a self-storage facility and you'll put them there. When you want them, you'll go get them. There are other people, of course, at the self-storage facility storing their own items. It's a little bit different, I guess, because in a cyber locker situation, you might go look at the other person's self-storage locker. You might say, well, I like that tennis racket, I'd like to have it. So cyber lockers exist basically as an online way of storing, especially large files such as movies and sometimes music.
Yeah, there's a 2009 RAND Corporation study, I think it's been very well received, linking piracy of movies and other intellectual property to organized crime. Has that been the case with these targets in Operation In Our Sights? Are we talking the same either drug cartels or really, really sophisticated organizations, or is this more individuals who slap up banner ads and find some revenue stream from being able to show the latest episode of Entourage for people who don't have HBO?
Like a lot of criminal activity, you're going to see a little bit of both. You're going to see some organized criminal enterprises in counterfeiting and piracy, and we've certainly seen that. And sometimes you are going to see sort of the proverbial young 25-year-old who lives with his parents and is very tech savvy and able to host a site fairly easily. Unfortunately, it is fairly easy to set up a site and get content, protected content on that site, and then get ad revenue.
Right. Yeah, speaking about this operation, the same clip that we just saw of ICE Director John Morton, he commented that just in one day, June 15th, some 37,000 people watched a pirated copy of Sex and the City Part 2 on, I think it was tvshack.net. How much information does ICE and other investigators have about those individuals, those 37,000 individuals who watched Sex and the City Part 2?
What we're looking at, what ICE is looking at in these investigations is really the individuals that host these sites, operate these sites, and generate illegal profit from other people's protected content. And indeed, those 37,000 people are probably all over the world. And those 37,000 people, what they should understand and hopefully understand, and this isn't necessarily a law enforcement responsibility, but by downloading that movie, they're actually taking away jobs. There are individuals who rely on the genuine sale of whether it's Sex and the City 2 or Iron Man 2 or whichever movie, rely on those sales for their own health care and their own pensions.
Right. Erik, I understand where you're coming from, but back to the question, how much information does the Department of Homeland Security and other investigative agencies in the United States, Interpol and whatnot around the world have about those individuals who actually downloaded or streamed content from these sites?
What I can tell you is the individual IP addresses, for instance, of those individuals were not a part of our investigation. That's not an area that we have, as you said earlier, a lot of sites to look at. Adding 37,000 individual IP addresses is not beneficial to curing the overall problem.
But that's different than what the music industry did, correct? Where it would go after some kids who were downloading music.
I think ours is a criminal law enforcement responsibility. The music industry took on a civil responsibility of their own as protecting their own product. A lot of industries do. But as criminal law enforcement agency, we really want to look at individuals that are violating the federal criminal law. The federal criminal law is violated by putting that material out there for a commercial purpose on the internet.
Erik Barnett, where are these sites hosted from? Where are they based?
Of the original 9 large sites that we seized on June 30th, 7 of them actually were hosted in countries that we have very good working relationships. 3 actually were hosted in the United States, and the rest were hosted mostly in Western European countries.
Yeah, Peter, it's interesting you brought up the music industry, the recording industry. I understand that in 2008, they essentially waved a white flag and gave up prosecuting consumers who are illegally downloading music. I wonder, to what extent is a criminal case or criminal prosecution of the individuals posting going to have any more of an effect than the entertainment industry has tried throughout the last decade and basically, to a large degree, basically given up on for the consumers? How is this going to be any more effective?
I think what we're trying to do is really, frankly, take away profit. Profit is what drives crime. And without commenting what others have done in the past, what we're doing is we're seizing the domain name. The domain name is actually the identity of this site. And a very easy analogy is McDonald's. People go to McDonald's because they like the food and they know what they're getting. They trust it. And if you change McDonald's name tomorrow, if you took it away and called it Bob's Burgers, not as many people are going to go there. And that's what we're doing with these sites. By doing that, we're taking away their ability to generate revenue. And if enough individuals start to realize they won't generate revenue from this type of criminal activity, they might not engage in it. In addition, one of the spin-offs that we had, it was sort of unanticipated, was 2 sites, 2 fairly large content-driven sites, actually voluntarily shut themselves down on July 1st after our action was announced. And so we hope that continues.
So Erik Barnett, you've taken down these sites that were using pirated materials. Were there prosecutions? Were there arrests?
So these are ongoing criminal investigations. So as you know, all law enforcement agencies, our end goal is to enforce the law, and that includes arrests and prosecutions. But because they're ongoing, I can't get into tremendous detail at this time.
And I want you to get your response to Jay Hathaway on downloadsquad.com. This is what he had to say about this issue. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement is part of Homeland Security, and acting as police for private movie studios hardly seems like a Homeland Security issue. Also, shutting down streaming movies sites, even if you seize their assets, as ICE has, is almost a futile pursuit.
I can understand where Mr. Hathaway believes his own personal opinions, but what we're talking about really here is a criminal law that's being violated. Homeland Security has several responsibilities, and one of our responsibilities really is the economic security of this country. Economic security is part of national security, and what we're talking about is taking individuals' livelihoods away from them by stealing their products and putting them out on the internet. And that's not something that the United States government can simply ignore and say, well, because one individual or a couple of individuals thinks that's a good idea, we're not going to enforce the criminal law. The criminal laws, of course, were passed by Congress, and it is the executive branch's responsibility to enforce them.
This is C-SPAN's Communicators program. Our guest is Erik Barnett, Assistant Deputy Director of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Also joining us is Isaac Wolf of Scripps Howard News Service.
How much is the demands and really the marketplace for these pirated movies, television shows, based on a failure by the entertainment industry to provide at a cost-competitive or reasonable price this content? I know a lot of people I talk to who steal this content basically say, look, if there was an iTunes store of movies, television shows, $1 a show, 50 cents a show, and it had everything, I would do that. But there's not, and I'm not going to subscribe to HBO just to watch Entourage. I'm going to go see it, immediately online for free. So how much of this is simply a failure by the entertainment industry to really coalesce?
So I think that I understand the question, but I'm a career law enforcement officer. I've been in law enforcement my entire career. What you're basically asking me is the analogy would be that Sony's TV sets are too expensive, and so somebody stealing that TV set is okay. And I think what we have to look at, again, is that these are crimes for a reason. They are crimes because they actually have a tangible impact on an individual. And it's not, of course, just the movie industry or the music industry that's suffering from counterfeiting and piracy. We are now seeing counterfeiting and piracy in all areas of American business. And it's not just luxury handbags anymore. It's really every item that has a profit margin is now being counterfeited. And so from a law enforcement agency's perspective, understanding that there are some policy considerations, we look at it as a criminal matter and we will enforce the law.
Erik Barnett, unfortunately I'm old enough to know what a music store is and having paid for a CD, but there's a whole generation growing up that expects free movies, free music. Is that something you have to fight?
Well, of course, I'm old enough to remember when we paid for LPs and even 45s, but I will say that public attitude is really important because we do recognize, as has been mentioned, that there are a lot of sites and there's a lot of opportunity. And individuals like my 10-year-old son or my 8-year-old daughter will probably learn fairly quickly how to obtain things for free over the internet. So public awareness is a major part of what we're trying to do as well. The ICE is the lead at the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center. There we've actually hosted symposiums on certain things like the connection between intellectual property theft and organized crime. Because we do want to make a statement that just simply downloading a song, downloading a movie is theft, and the proceeds from that theft can become part of an organized criminal enterprise's profits.
But what evidence do you have that the streaming or downloadable illegally copied movies are actually being used by organized crime as opposed to individuals who see this as their own business model?
And I think it does, again, there is a broad range of individuals engaged in all criminal activity. But whether it's the downloads of movies or whether it's hard goods counterfeiting like purses and electronics, we do see organized criminal enterprise. Most specifically in the hard goods area. And the hard goods area is an area where both from our own investigations and quite frankly anecdotally, we know that individuals that used to be engaged in other criminal activity turn to counterfeiting and piracy because they believe It's more profitable and sometimes with less penalty.
I'm sorry, a hard goods area, can you define that?
So hard goods are mostly what you would think of as the luxury goods, the purses and some of the other items, and also counterfeit pharmaceuticals.
Right, but that's not what we're talking about today, which is online television and movies. So what I'm getting at is, it seems to me more of a jump to connect organized crime to streaming, illegal copies of Entourage or Sex and the City. Or you want to talk about pharmaceuticals or handbags, or even, for that matter, copied DVDs, which I understand the Mexican drug cartels have a hand in. That's something else. I'm saying, what evidence do you have specifically for online streamed or download movies, television shows, that those are connected with organized crime cartels?
Yeah. Well, our criminal investigations are ongoing, but I think the message really needs to be also that there's theft involved here. Whether that theft is committed by what you consider organized criminal enterprises or just a group of individuals that engage in a conspiracy to commit theft, there's still an element of criminal enterprise in there. Right. And it's not La Cosa Nostra, but the reality is you're still dealing with organized criminal elements.
Erik Barnett, has the Obama administration made this a priority?
Well, I'm not a political appointee, but as you probably well know, the Vice President has held a summit on this. The President appointed for the first time ever an intellectual property enforcement coordinator, Victoria Espinel, whose sole job is to coordinate the federal government's response to counterfeiting and piracy. And ICE works very closely with Victoria's office. We worked very closely on the Joint Strategic Plan that was recently announced by Vice President Biden in June.
Has Congress given you enough tools, in your view, to do your job?
Well, although I'm not a political appointee, I'm also, as an administration executive branch employee, not usually allowed to ask for more resources. What I can say is that ICE considers this a high priority for enforcement for all of the reasons that we've talked about. And we recently were fortunate to receive a $5 million line item in the President's budget for the IPR Center. That will help us greatly in enforcing the law.
Right. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the internet service provider's role in trying to identify illegally streamed or downloaded content? What should the Comcasts and Verizons be doing to identify this or stop it?
So there are some policy issues involved, but they're really not, as ICE, it's not, ours is a law enforcement agency function. And what ISPs can be doing is actually the IPEC, Victoria's role, is really very much looking to that, as well as, of course, some of the regulatory agencies.
I'm sorry, you're saying that from your efforts to identify the illegal pirators, providers, or distributors of this, you're not working with the ISPs to see how their pipelines, their systems are being exploited?
Well, we'll work with ISPs during our investigations, but it is a different role to ask how they should either use their own technologies. That's really more of a policy function, and it's not a law enforcement agency function.
Erik Barnett, your boss, John Morton, is on his way to China next month to talk about piracy issues. What role does China play in piracy?
In piracy and counterfeiting, China plays a very big role and actually could serve a very large enforcement function. ICE is a sister agency with Customs and Border Protection, and together the two agencies seized hundreds of thousands of goods last year from China. These are counterfeit goods in usually the hard goods categories, obviously handbags and other counterfeit goods. Indeed, about 80% of the counterfeit goods seized at U.S. ports of entry are from China. And so part of Director Morton's mission to China next month is to talk to China, as we have been regularly, about how we can work together to enforce both their laws, which they have against counterfeiting and piracy, and our own laws.
Yeah. I want to turn back to peer-to-peer file sharing. Will you talk a little bit more about what the breakdown is in terms of how much content, how many movies, TV shows are pirated through the streaming or downloadable websites versus peer-to-peer sites, and also difficulties engaging the volume through peer-to-peer. I understand that there can be difficulties in understanding the full number of files or even getting a correct estimate. So I'm interested if you could talk a little bit about that.
So the first round of operation in our sites was primarily driven by our meetings with industry. The IPR Center, we work very closely with industry because they spend a significant amount of time, money, and effort looking at the problem and looking at where their products are being offered and pirated. None of the sites that were referred to us were peer-to-peer sites. All of the sites were streaming sites. One of the things that is, the trends that is occurring, as you probably well know, is that because of the bandwidth increases, there is now more opportunity for individuals through linking sites and cyber lockers to obtain content and less reliance on peer-to-peer sharing.
Right. But I just wonder if peer-to-peer is this basically wide open system, and please offer your thoughts if you don't think so. Even if you can go after these for-profit websites, you still have all these other opportunities for illegally exchanging or disseminating content, right? Even if you attack and defeat the most visible, or right now the largest method of disseminating content, you still haven't solved the problem, right? There's still ample opportunities for the public or consumers to consume this media without Hollywood getting paid.
You've certainly hit on a lot of the problems that we face, the challenges we face. What we've decided to do is make operation in our sites a permanent enforcement action at the IPR Center, working with ICE agents around the country, with FBI agents that are at the IPR Center as well, and with the U.S. attorneys and Department of Justice. And that's going to mean sometimes it's file sharing sites, sometimes it's linking websites, and sometimes it's cyber lockers. It is a huge challenge for us, but it's one that, frankly, we needed to start on, and we did.
Right. And we will have to leave it there. Erik Barnett is Assistant Deputy Director of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Isaac Wolf is with Scripps Howard. Gentlemen, thank you for being on the Communicators.
Thank you.